So I'll copy this, Control C, and I will go back to my test package. Okay, this is our chapter 18 package. All insert Java class test. Okay, so we are in our test class. So in our test cases, I'm thinking of writing some quite a few test cases. One with the invalid state, something as manually marking the time as a negative value and see that whether our exception is thrown correctly or not. And then we will also check whether if the time is correct, I mean it's a correct positive value, and whether it's passing that validate object method and giving us the correct object back without throwing any exception. To save some time, I will copy the test cases from the previous chapter, say chapter 13. Just from here, I will copy all the test cases and then we will make some necessary changes. So Control C, and I go here and then Control V. Okay. Now we'll make necessary changes required for this chapter. I will create two slash files. So Control D, and I will mark it as 1. And I will just create one market data, our Pojo class, market data with validation, this one. So I'll copy this, Control C, and go back here. And I will just call this as market data with validation. And there's no constructor parameter. And I will just call it as market data. Okay. I don't need to have this separate line, so it's fine. Okay, Control-Alt-L. Okay, now we go to our setup method because we are having two files now. One for storing the invalidate test cases and one for normal, the correct cases. Okay, so I will create path of this test resources and I will call this as market data with validation test. And if doesn't exist, then it will create a new file. Now, similar step, we need to do it for serial file 1, this one. So I will again copy this, Control C and Control V. I will mark this as 1. Here I will change the file as test1. And again, I will just mark everything as 1, 1, 1. Okay. So it means that it will create two files. And let's see how we are going to use it now. And for the market data that we have created before in the setup method, I will create all those invariants except the time, so that only the time we will change in our unit test cases. So here I will copy like this. Okay, till here. Except time, I will remove the time. So we have got our class level market data object, and here we are setting, except this, everything else should be intact. Okay. So our setup method is looking good. So what we are doing is that we created two files for different cases for invalidate state and valid state. And we created these files when needed, and we set that market data object except time, because time is the only field which we are going to test around with correct and incorrect state. Okay, so let's start writing the unit test case. So the first unit test case I will write is test serialize with invalid state, meaning that I will put time as a negative value. Okay, so test basic sentence for Java Pojo with invalid object state. Just change the display name, and I don't need this anymore. And I think I only need market data dot set time. That's everything else I will remove, and I will set it something as a negative value, say minus. So it's setting a time where, so this market data, everything else is there, but for time, I'm putting it as negative value. Okay, and we are using the first file. and we write this object to this file. Okay. Let me check. Yes, all is looking good. Now let me deserialize this invalid state object. So I will mark it as test deserialize with invalid object state. Similarly, I will write it here as well. Invalid object state. Okay. And now here we have to change quite a bit here, because right now it will fail our validateObject method and throw that exception. So for that we can change all this. Let me change it all this method here. Okay. So we are simply reading this file, and after this we expect that it should be throwing an exception, right? So for that we should assert throws. This is how we assert any exception, and we know that it should be invalid object exception, right? Dot class when I called this OIS readObject method. Okay, and I will control Alt V. So we have got, I just called it as exception, and let me move it here to the next line so that it's clear, and I will call it as, say, final var of exception. So we can see that it should be throwing invalid object exception dot class. And now I can also check that what is the exception reason which is thrown. So assert equals, okay, and I will do exception dot get message, and it should be exactly same as let me copy from object data with validation. So here it should be like this, right? Maybe I will remove this %, and so that we don't have any, we want exact message, right? So this should be exactly same like this, and I go back here, and okay, and time that we are going to provide here should be this value without L, because the string format, it will not be containing L. So Control Alt L. I will also remove this, it's not needed. Alt Enter, remove. Okay. So let's revise this again. Once we serialize, we are serializing with the incorrect state of time as minus as a negative value, and we write it to the file. And once we deserialize it, we expect an exception which should be thrown as invalid object exception, because we have already checked that when the time is a negative value, it will throw this exception with this exception reason. This is what we are doing and asserting here. So let me test this unit case, both the unit test cases before we proceed further.